When people hear the name Greenland, they often picture a silent land at the edge of the world, where ice and snow blanket the horizon and there is almost no trace of power. But behind that tranquil facade, a battle of wits is taking place in the shadows, where superpowers view Greenland not as an island, but as a key that can unlock or lock the global power order. And it is in that frigid place that the United States and Denmark are engaged in a struggle whose true danger few realize. Greenland, the new focal point of the world. Immediately after the world had barely finished the story of Venezuelan President Maduro's abduction, global attention quickly shifted to a region dominating international news and attracting the attention of millions: the story of Greenland and the renewed interest from the United States. Once again, U.S. government officials made shocking comments regarding the icy island, prompting continuous global media coverage. In Europe, bordering the Arctic, the political atmosphere became thick with anxiety and strong opposition to the new signals from Washington. Since the initial statements, there has been deep concern that this could lead to a crisis affecting the order of the world's most important military alliance, NATO. Denmark strongly opposes the idea. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called the idea of acquiring Greenland absurd and an insult to sovereignty, even warning that if the US acts unilaterally, it could dismantle the NATO alliance. Meanwhile, the Greenland governor emphasized that the island is not for sale and that its people want to determine their own future. Looking back at history, this dream is not new. As early as 1867, Secretary of State William Seward raised the issue of buying Greenland shortly after the U.S. completed its purchase of Alaska from Russia. By 1910, the administration under President William Taft had discussed a proposal to cede Mindanao Island from the Philippines in exchange for Greenland and other territories. But that plan was never pursued due to the impending entry into World War I. In 1946, shortly after the war, President Harry Truman made a formal offer to buy Greenland for $100 million gold bullion, a huge sum at the time, to ensure national security in the context of the burgeoning Cold War. However, Denmark refused to sell the territory, although the U.S. was later allowed to use strategic military bases there. Throughout more than 5 presidential administrations and nearly 160 years of history, the idea of controlling Greenland has recurred many times in various forms. This shows that the U.S. desire to possess this island is not a random event or merely the personal touch of a president, but rather a long-term strategic trend deeply ingrained in U.S. geopolitical policy. Greenland is not an island that the U.S. chose based on emotion, but rather a product of a destined position determined by geography on the world map. All of this raises a big question. Why is the U.S. so determined, and are other big powers also calculating their own ambitions for Greenland? Let's explore this in more detail in the following parts of the video. Greenland, when history is already written on the map. If you look at a world map, you'll see something important. Greenland is not just an icy island, but situated between North America and Europe, occupying an extremely important strategic position. It lies on the shortest route connecting Russia and the United States. If you draw a straight line from Moscow to New York, you'll notice that this path passes through the Arctic and crosses Greenland. This is the route that intercontinental ballistic missiles from major powers can fly, making attacks on the U.S. easier and faster. More than just a typical military choke point, Greenland is a strategic area that nuclear submarines must traverse to carry out military operations in the Arctic. In military strategy, Greenland is considered a choke point, a crucial strategic bottleneck. Whoever controls this choke point will control the flow of military activity in the region. This is no different than controlling a single bridge across a major river. Whoever holds that bridge has power over both the surrounding land and sea. In fact, Greenland is not just a crucial choke point, but part of a larger strategic structure that NATO calls the GUK Gap, an acronym for Greenland Iceland United Kingdom. This is a strategic maritime corridor connecting the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans. Throughout the Cold War, the U.S. and its allies built a sonar network and numerous military bases there to protect this corridor from Soviet encroachment. And Greenland is an indispensable link in that defense system. Before climate change altered everything, the Arctic was considered a natural shield protecting the U.S. from any attack from the north. Year-round ice made it impassable for ships and unsuitable for aircraft to land. But now, that ice wall is melting at an alarming rate. Climate change is warming the Arctic 4 times faster than the rest of the world. New sea lanes are opening, and America's natural defenses are under threat. At this time, Greenland plays a crucial role as a key gateway protecting America's northern gateway. This not only increases military interest in Greenland, but also makes the island a hotbed of international power competition. With rapidly changing climate and the development of military and energy technologies, Greenland could become a decisive factor in the strategies of major powers. Greenland, a land that the United States has harbored ambitions to acquire for over a century. For nearly 160 years, from America's first leaders to Donald Trump, everyone has recognized something few dare to confront. Can you believe that Greenland, known only for its ice and polar bears, has become the center of global strategy? It all began in 1867, when Secretary of State William Seward looked at a world map and saw something most people failed to recognize. After the US bought Alaska from Russia, Seward realized a strategic truth. Greenland was strategically located at the gateway to the Arctic, and without it, the US would be missing an indispensable part of its defense system. Seward, with his foresight, began to ask, how could the US control the Arctic without possessing Greenland? That's why he proposed buying Greenland from Denmark, even though he knew at the time it was considered a crazy idea. But it was from there that the story of Greenland began a 150-year journey, spanning successive presidents and generations of politicians, each with their own strategic vision for the island. Although his proposal was ridiculed, and the deal failed for various reasons, particularly the disagreement of the US Congress, the idea persisted and continued to be a key strategy for subsequent presidents. By 1946, in the context of the Cold War, President Truman realized that controlling Greenland was more urgent than ever. The Soviet Union had developed intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of flying over the Arctic and Greenland, reaching the United States in just minutes. For that reason, Truman offered Denmark $100 million in gold bullion to buy Greenland, but once again, Denmark refused. Nevertheless, Greenland remained a crucial element in the US defense strategy. During the war years, the US had to deploy troops to Greenland to prevent Hitler from using the island as a strategic military base. This further confirmed that Greenland in enemy hands was an existential threat. With the development of nuclear weapons and nuclear submarines by the Soviet Union, the fear of a surprise attack from the north became more real than ever. Greenland was not only a missile warning point, but also a crucial location for detecting and responding quickly to threats. A Russian submarine carrying nuclear missiles could dive deep beneath the Arctic ice and approach the US coast undetected. With a distance of 3,000 km from Greenland to Boston, it would only take 10 to 12 minutes for a missile from this submarine to reach its target, creating a potentially life-or-death situation. Greenland has become a key point in the US national defense system, where radar and sonar play a crucial role in detecting and tracking threats. Therefore, since 2019, Donald Trump has revisited the proposal to buy Greenland. Despite public criticism, Trump's proposal is not an isolated idea but a continuation of a strategy that has spanned 150 years. The rapidly melting Arctic, the opening of new sea lanes, and Russia's reactivation of over 475 Soviet-era military bases make Greenland a valuable asset that major powers covet. So, where will Greenland go? Will it become a crucial geopolitical battleground, or will it continue to be a strategic anchor in a rapidly changing world? Greenland. 3 waves of turbulence arrive simultaneously. You probably never imagined that Greenland, an icy island in the Arctic, could become the focal point of bloody confrontations in a global strategic battle. But it's happening right before your eyes, and things are poised to explode. So why now? Why is Greenland so important, while the Arctic seems so distant and frigid? The answer lies in 3 major changes happening simultaneously, like 3 doors swinging open, revealing a turbulent future. The first change, the ice is melting. Imagine a permafrost sea that has remained unchanged for millions of years, but now layers of ice are melting under the impact of climate change. The Arctic, once considered impregnable, is now revealing new shipping routes, opening the door to global trade. These routes not only shorten journeys, but also open up opportunities for exploiting enormous resources. 25% of the world's unexploited oil and gas lies hidden beneath melting ice. In just a few years, these precious resources could change the global economic and military landscape. The second change is the treasure beneath Greenland. As the ice melts, Greenland will not only open up pathways, but also reveal one of the planet's largest strategic resource reserves. Beneath the ice lies rare earth elements, lithium, graphite, nickel, and metals needed for batteries, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and modern weapons. Europe has identified Greenland as possessing 25 of the 34 minerals crucial to its high-tech economy. Meanwhile, China controls a large portion of the global rare earth supply chain. If Greenland is exploited on a large scale, it could break that monopoly and alter the world's industrial power balance. Greenland is not just ice and rock. It is the foundation of the future technology economy. The third change, the rise of Russia. And then, Russia, the northern giant, didn't sit idly by while the world changed. With 53% of the Arctic coastline, Russia is pouring billions of dollars into building an impenetrable military fortress. Nuclear submarines lurk beneath the ice, and modern anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles have been deployed. Russia is ready to fight to defend what it considers a vital interest, and that is the Arctic, where the power struggle between great powers will unfold. These three changes are not separate factors. They are combined forces creating a powerful vortex, transforming the Arctic from a remote and frigid land into something far removed from reality. Melting ice not only enriches the Arctic, but also opens the door to fierce competition between China, Russia, and the United States. And at the heart of this struggle, Greenland, an island lying on a strategic path, is no longer a distant point. Greenland is the key to unlocking the future of the world's great powers. Whoever controls Greenland controls the future of the world. Why Greenland is important. The benefits you can't ignore. First benefit, military security. Imagine an icy island in the middle of the vast ocean, yet the last line of defense protecting the United States. Greenland is not just a cold piece of land, but the heart of American military strategy. There, Christophe Air Base, one of the most important American bases, built since 1951, is the first point of contact for detecting ballistic missiles from Russia. This is the gateway to any military response. Losing Greenland is not just losing an island. Losing Greenland means losing the ability to detect missiles in the very first moment, when life and death are separated by seconds. Nothing can replace Greenland's position, and it is vital in the modern Cold War. Second benefit, economy and supply chains. Behind the layers of ice and snow, Greenland hides unimaginable treasures. 25 of the world's most important minerals, including lithium for electric vehicle batteries, GFI for semiconductors, and rare earth elements for everything from phones to missiles, lie beneath this ice sheet. This is no ordinary treasure trove, but a strategic weapon for the modern world. Each year, China controls almost the entire rare earth supply chain, but Greenland has the potential to break this monopoly. Whoever controls Greenland controls the future of global technology and energy. This isn't just a matter of resources, it's a power struggle in a rapidly changing world. Third benefit, trade routes. Imagine a new network of shipping routes emerging across the Arctic, with Greenland as a crucial transit point. With the ever-expanding trans-Arctic route, Greenland is no longer just a remote island. It becomes the toll station of the 21st century, controlling the shortest trade route between Asia and Europe. Just as Singapore controlled the Strait of Malacca, Greenland now has the opportunity to become a strategic hub for the entire world, a place where all major trade must pass through. Whoever controls Greenland will hold global economic power. Which scenario will decide Greenland's fate? On the world map, Greenland looks like a giant, forgotten iceberg on the edge of the Arctic. But in Washington's security briefing rooms, the island is seen as a key that could determine who controls the 21st century. For decades, Greenland was largely silent, cold, and detached from the news. But today, every decision concerning Greenland can shake NATO, alarm Europe, and force the US, Russia, and China to adjust their global strategies. On the Arctic chessboard, Greenland is no longer just an island. It has become a gateway. And before that gateway, America stands 4 paths, each with its own price. The first path is money. Washington could enter with a check, an offer large enough to make Denmark and Greenland consider it. Historically, the United States has done this with Louisiana and Alaska, two deals that shaped the nation's map for over a century afterward. On paper, this is the legal, neat, and least disruptive path. But Greenland is no longer the uncharted territory it was in 19th century Alaska. Greenlanders today see their land as part of their identity, not a commodity. Denmark has said no many times, and each time, the resistance from Greenland has grown stronger. An awakening island is not easily bought. In the short term, the door is almost completely closed. The second path is for Greenland to break free from Denmark's shadow. Instead of buying, the US could wait. Wait for Greenland to become an independent nation, then offer a deeper partnership, similar to what it offered Palau or the Marshall Islands. Nominally, Greenland would be free. In reality, its security and economy would be tied to Washington. This is the most subtle approach. It respects Greenland's self-respect and doesn't infringe on Danish sovereignty, but it's also the slowest path. Greenland currently relies on hundreds of millions of dollars in aid annually. If the US wants to replace that role, it must accept the burden of a fragile Arctic economy. This is a strategy for the future, not for short terms. The third path is pressure. Tariffs, sanctions, diplomatic pressure. Washington could turn Greenland into a political flashpoint to force Copenhagen to back down. This is quick and noisy. It shows the world that the US isn't joking. But it's also dangerous. Denmark is part of NATO. Putting pressure on an ally when Europe is trembling before Russia is like pulling a brick from the foundation of the Western alliance itself. When Copenhagen warned that military action could break NATO, it was a reminder that Greenland is not just an island, it's a spark. The final path is to stay, but not own. The US might not buy Greenland, not force it, but quietly expand its presence. More bases, more radar, more investment. Keep Greenland within its security orbit without redrawing the map. This is the most stable path, the least conflict-ridden. But it is also the path with the greatest risk. If one day Greenland chooses a different path, the US could lose its Arctic anchor without being able to react. Greenland is a gateway to history. Greenland is entering a moment where history rarely allows a small land to choose its own destiny. Not through war, not through revolution, but through the slow but irreversible shift of geopolitical forces building up beneath the ice. In systems science, this is called a phase shift, a point where all the pressure accumulated over decades finally finds an outlet. Greenland stands right at that point. On one side is the pushing force. A new generation of Greenlanders no longer accepts the role of a peripheral part of a distant empire. The movement for self-determination is growing stronger. At the same time, what was once buried under the ice is now emerging. Minerals for batteries, for technology, for green energy are transforming Greenland from a forgotten land into a strategic treasure. As its value increases, so too is national consciousness. On the other side is the holding force. Greenland still relies on funding from Denmark. This island lacks an army, a sufficiently strong administrative apparatus, and a self-sustaining economy. Above all, there's the silent fear that if it leaves Copenhagen, Greenland could fall straight into the arms of another superpower. When the forces pushing overcome the forces holding, the situation will change. Greenland will no longer be an autonomous region, but a new political entity. But independence isn't the final answer. The real question is, to whom will Greenland lean when standing alone between the great powers? Denmark is caught in a cruel choice. Keeping Greenland comes at an ever-increasing cost and faces an unquenchable independence movement. Letting go means losing territory, status, and a part of its 300-year history. Selling Greenland to the US would be seen as a betrayal, not only to the Greenlanders, but to Denmark's own identity. As for Greenland, they want freedom, but freedom doesn't come with a price. An economy based on fishing cannot sustain a modern nation. Minerals beneath the ice require capital, technology, and global markets. Independence without a backer can lead to collapse. But accepting patronage from a superpower also means sacrificing a portion of recently acquired sovereignty. The US needs Greenland, but threats are causing coolness in both Copenhagen and Nuuk. Meanwhile, Washington lacks the Arctic infrastructure to directly confront Russia. Putting pressure on a NATO ally at a time when Europe fears Moscow only exacerbates US strategic contradictions. China wants to enter the Arctic but lacks a foothold. Investment in Greenland is hampered by US pressure. To navigate the Arctic sea lanes, Beijing relies on Russia, trading one dependence for another. Russia has a geographical advantage, but lacks money and technology after sanctions. Moscow needs China, but fears being overshadowed by Beijing. The war in Ukraine has drained resources that should have been available to the Arctic. No one has everything they need, and that very scarcity creates a dangerous space where uncontrollable scenarios can unfold. Greenland is no longer just an iceberg on the map. It is becoming a new entity, with its own will, with its own interests, and with its own path. 56,000 people in Greenland hold the fate of one of the most important chess pieces of this century in their hands. The superpowers still think they are controlling the game, but that small piece has begun to move on its own. What if Greenlanders became US citizens? Imagine a morning in Nuuk, where colorful houses line the icy bay. The Greenland flag still flies in the wind, but on the passports of its inhabitants, the words United States of America have appeared. Reindeer hunters, Arctic fishermen, and Inuit families are now, legally speaking, citizens of a superpower across the ocean. For them, it's not just an administrative change, it's a life-changing shift. The dollar replaces the krone. American law replaces Danish law. The American military replaces the Arctic Guard. And in the skies over Greenland, radar bases and space surveillance aircraft are no longer the presence of an ally, but of the host nation itself. For Washington, this would be a colossal geopolitical victory. Greenland becoming part of American territory means the Arctic is no longer a border region, but a backyard. New shipping lanes, strategic mineral deposits, and the entire northern gateway to North America would be under American law. But for the Greenlanders, the price is the most painful question. They would gain access to a vast economy, a robust welfare system, and a near-absolute military shield. In return, they would have to question whether their Inuit identity, their unique language, and the self-determination of a small people could survive in the shadow of a global empire. If Greenlanders were to become American citizens, it would be more than just a change of nationality. It would be the moment one of the oldest lands in the Arctic stepped into the center of global power, where their decisions would no longer merely affect the ice and snow, but could shake the entire global order. And the most haunting question isn't who will control Greenland, but whether the world is ready to accept a tiny landmass on the edge of the ice deciding to change the global power order.